tonight's meeting with a presentation of our downtown Ardsley revitalization strategy plan. And with us tonight is looking for Tiffany. Hi, Tiffany.
Hello.
And Kevin. Okay, who is going to start this presentation? And are you going to share screens and have slides? And
No.
Start, go ahead.
No, we're going to not share screens. We're not going to show a PowerPoint, and we're going to be bold and just go for it.
Okay.
All
well,
right.
When you go for it, each of you please introduce yourselves and tell us what your role in our comprehensive plan and our revitalization implementation strategy is.
Sure. So first of all, good evening to all the Board of Trustees and everyone in Ardsley. It's nice to see everyone again. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Tiffany Zazula. I work with Pace Law School's Land Use Law Center. And my colleague, Kevin Dwarka, who is also on the screen waving his hand, and I worked closely with the village in I guess it was 2020, to adopt a new comprehensive plan for the village of Ardsley. And so hopefully everyone and many of you have looked at that comprehensive plan online. It is chock full of wonderful things and a vision for the village of Ardsley for the next 5 to 10 years.
Excuse me, can I ask everyone to please mute themselves? Thank you.
So, so on that note, when the comprehensive plan was adopted, there was I think we still have a few people unmuted, but that's okay. Oh, there we go. After the comprehensive plan got adopted, there was a focus that you'll see both from the residents and from the comprehensive plan regarding the downtown of Ardsley, and wanting to focus creating that village center that I know so many people have wanted for so long. And so tonight, the reason I'm not doing a PowerPoint is hopefully what we were hoping to do was have any questions that the Board of Trustees have. You all should have received an updated working document of the downtown Ardsley implementation strategy. And then what I'll do is just verbalize a little bit. Again, I didn't want to share a PowerPoint, but really review the purpose of the report. So the downtown Ardsley implementation strategy, or as we like to call it, DARIS, creates an action plan, again, for creating the village's center and your village center. So obviously, many of you know you're very well positioned to create a vibrant and accessible and economically productive village center. But residents expressed during our times in the comprehensive plan, that obviously a lot of the current land uses and current infrastructure and some of the infrastructure conditions and some of the the ways we use downtown really don't support a walkable, multi-use, experiential environment that I think many of you had expressed wanting in the village. So many of the things brought up for the village center obviously was a lack of housing, a lack of sidewalks came up. People expressed the lack of landscaping and parking and urban design standards for the buildings. And so all of that was raised. And what we tried to do now was give you that framework within this report of all the strategies the village needs to catalyze a new development pattern. So this gives you, this report, a full assessment of your downtown, its existing conditions to date, a list of the property owners and some of the buildings that are there in downtown. It gives you a new village a new vision for your village center. And if you take a closer look at it, it actually shows that new vision and that new center on Center Street, which can then be anchored by your civic center building and maybe ground floor, multi-use or retail, space. And most importantly, it gives you in this document a variety of actions that your village staff can undertake to help this move forward. So, you know, what we felt important in this planning document was to give you essentially the steps needed to accomplish this. And so all of those actions and this guidance is really for your staff to help move the next step forward. So it goes through in each action and it identifies essentially who does it, who needs to do it. And again, that lays out the steps that have to happen in order to move that next step forward. The only other thing I want to say is that this is a working document. And so there is going to be changes economically. There's going to be changes in your market conditions, right? And this isn't we don't want this document to sit on a shelf. It's something, again, it's a guide, it has goals. And as you move forward in it, right, and as conditions change, you continue to look at it, refine it, and again, work with your staff on it. So there's a huge amount of possibilities. I think we've all expressed that during the last, few years, and hopefully excitement about the next steps for your downtown. And I think that hopefully, we hand this off to your staff and they can take it that next level and that next step. So on that note, I mean, I'm happy to answer questions, or if Kevin, if you had anything to share, I'm here to answer any questions from the board.
Kevin, were you going to add anything to that?
No, I'm good. I'm very happy to answer any questions that you may have. Tiffany pretty much covered everything.
Okay, so my understanding of reading the proposed action plans, that one of the things that we first and foremost have to do is a number of zoning changes in our downtown area, which I think is something that we are immediately working on and will be addressing in the next month or two to move this forward. But one of the questions that I had when going through this is, why did you decide that Center Street would be the optimum place for the center, the village center, rather than something like Adams Square or even Village Green?
Yeah, I can answer that one since it covers Mayor more of the technical pieces here. I think we have struggled for some time with Sawmill Road to overcome a lot of the barriers toward making that into a main street, specifically, the purview and control over it by the state and the recent changes and the channelization and the impacts of, a rather complicated intersection, the bridge. And then just also, whereas Adams Square had perhaps, been the original center of Ardsley when the road continued onward to Dobbs Ferry, it's a dead end. And so after a lot of, site analysis and visits, we looked at the opportunities along Center as being more robust, with properties that were in play, properties that could be potentially assembled together, whether through private development or through partnership with the village, and a lot more latitude in terms of how you allocate the right of way of Center in terms of accommodating, both pedestrians and vehicular access. So we seem to think that Center had tremendous potential. I don't want to discount the importance of making pedestrian improvements and land use changes along Sawmill, because your residents do need a complete downtown, one where they can circulate throughout the entire center of Ardsley, not just along Center Street and have a place to go. But there was a lot of design potential on Center Street and a lot of merits to potentially anchoring a type of civic center or community space there too.
You referenced two spots.
Is this live? What is this?
You referenced two spots on the corner of 9A and Ashford Avenue on the east and west sides of the street that are properties that are owned by the village. One is a parking lot currently, and one is a Park, where Silliman Park is. And you reference those as potential development spots. What is it that you see that could be developed in those two spots that would make, and it's something that you reference in the report, that whole corner would help make that corner more appealable, because it does seem to be the gateway to the village of Ardsley.
Yeah, I think we all sort of share this frustration that you arrive to Ardsley, you cross the bridge if you're coming from that direction, and then you confront two rather underutilized properties that don't lead you in and that don't lead you onward along Ashford Avenue to the Village Hall. And while there have been some really wonderful things that have come out of the investment in green spaces and park spaces, including at that intersection, you know, we do wonder if a higher and better use could be mixed use development there. And, you know, there's some tricky parts to developing those sites, but it would seem as though, just given that those sites are in play, if you will, because the village has ownership of them, that they merit greater attention toward their redevelopment. There are many parts of downtown Ardsley that are harder to be in play because you don't have the site control. You can't control the market. And, you know, you only have a limited capacity to really be brokering deals with private developers. But on the sites that are yours, where you could go out with an RFP and invite the development community to take advantage of, you know, different land use regulations and zoning changes, you do have a chance of creating, you know, a very welcoming mixed use development flanking both sides of Ashford Avenue and inviting people to continue onward, you know, into the village and toward, you know, what is the current Village Hall site.
Another thing that you reference in here is increasing the height on many of the buildings, which is a zoning change that we need to make to add more residential opportunities to our downtown area. Why do you think that's important?
Well, you know, that came from a few places. As you know, Tiffany and I were actively involved in your comprehensive plan, the formulation of the policies and the review of community needs that shaped those policies. And I think that something that we were both very aware of was the limitations of your existing housing stock, you know, which is like many communities, you know, in the Metro New York area, is overwhelmingly single family. And there's some wonderful things about that, except it also has made it harder for you to attract a more diverse population. It's made it harder for young folks who may have grown up in Ardsley when they graduate to be able to come home and, you know, have an entry-level apartment in Ardsley. It's made it harder for folks who are seniors and no longer in their high income generating years and who are struggling with taxes and may want to age in place, may want to stay in the community, but they're struggling to find an adequate 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment. So those were some of the reasons, Mayor. I mean, just in terms of, you know, a housing need for a more diverse and affordable housing stock. But the other piece of it was to activate your downtown to I don't want to say 24/7, but, you know, for there to be street life in the evening and in the afternoon of people coming home and working from home and going to lunch in the middle of the day and people being out during the evening and giving the retail businesses an infusion of energy by having a residential population. So it's partially about meeting housing needs, and then it's also about just creating more vibrancy so that you have a real downtown that's a true place, a community.
Well, one of the steps that we are also taking is an action item that you have pointed out, and that is to look to do a branding strategy for the village in the first instance, along with the zoning changes. But another item that you had was to appoint a junior urban planner. So what would a junior urban planner help us with going forward? Is that someone that would, you know, actually have the greater vision more than we would have? Or how does that work?
Well, let me say, in terms of the vision here, that vision was very largely shaped by the residents through the input they provided during the comprehensive planning process in terms of conveying what their own needs and aspirations were for this community, what their policy priorities were. And so the document you have here, I mean, it does present a vision. There's a conceptual diagram. And I don't want to say that the vision is now done and complete, but really the work that has to be done here isn't so much about the conceptual idea of there needing to be a downtown. I think your residents would like to have a place to meet others and have dinner and experience culture and recreation and parks. It's the implementation steps. And it's very hard for a community to undertake implementation without having someone who's a junior planner with expertise in zoning and land use, who also, you talked, Mayor, about the branding, and with the branding, there will be the implementation. Someone who really is the liaison to your merchants and your business community, someone who is working with them to champion their businesses, someone who is also aware of the economic development opportunities, who can cultivate relationships with developers and make them aware of some of the properties in downtown Ardsley, which are underutilized and ripe for development. Some of the outreach that Tiffany and I did was really interesting because, we spoke with property owners, and there was a willingness for them in some cases to move on from those properties and sell them and engage in development activity. But those are conversations that require some hand-holding. And if you had a planner on staff who could take the roadmaps from your comprehensive plan and this more detailed roadmap that you now have in DARIS and be in charge of it, be responsible for it, I think that you could make a lot of progress here. As you'll note from the whole column on implementation steps, there is so much to do here. It is not the stuff for a board of trustees to get bogged down in. I mean, some of this stuff is very detailed and specific, but it's really the stuff that your administration needs to be undertaking. And if your administration is supported by a junior planner, that would be fantastic. It's not the only way you could go. You could hire a consultant who is, kind of there temporarily and on contract, and that could work too. I think, Tiffany and I favor the idea of a junior planner because of the accountability, the institutional knowledge that gets cultivated, the relationship building, someone whom the community identifies as one of you and who identifies the community as theirs. There's a lot of power into that. So lots of different ways to do it, but that was our gut feeling, that if you could at least get a part-time village planner to shepherd this forward, this stuff wouldn't just stay on the paper or on a shelf, but it would actually materialize into a downtown.
Great, thank you. Judge Ponzini, I see that you have your hand up. If you unmute yourself, we can hear you.
I don't have my hand up.
You do have your hand up, but that's okay.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's all right. I just didn't know if you wanted to say something. All right, any board member have any questions for Tiffany or Kevin? Any questions or concerns or thoughts?
Yeah, I just had a question. If you can help us understand what you mean by the removal of requirements for minimum lot area, minimum yard and side setbacks.
Sure. So there are, and Tiffany, if you want to jump in on this one, because I know you were more actively involved in the land use and zoning piece than I was, but when we took a look at the zoning code, we were looking at the ways in which the development patterns that were dictated by the zoning code were falling short of the type of denser lot-to-lot development that creates a downtown that is walkable. And so to make it easier for developers to maximize the full amount of space on their parcels, we advocated for something which is very common in most downtown zoning codes that are looking to revitalize, which is to make it easier to develop on a larger piece of the lot and remove some of those requirements. The other thing, Asha, that was of concern was for many different reasons over decades, the urban form that took place in downtown Ardsley was more suburban in nature, with a lot of parking in front of single-story retail set back from the street, especially on Sawmill. We see this and other places. And the effect of that is that the street network is not a very inviting place for pedestrians when the buildings are set that far back, right? And when buildings are set flush with the sidewalk and the sidewalk is high quality, and as you bring the building right up to the lot line, it creates a much more pedestrian friendly environment. So both from best practices and also just from our observations of how your residents were using the streets, shaped that particular change. Tiffany, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add on that, since there were your zoning proposals, but.
Just one other question about the changes in the building requirements, and this is on page 26 of the DARIS. It says reduction of parking requirements for new housing require that new parking be built below or behind the housing, but in front of the building. I was having a hard time conceptualize what that meant.
I wonder.
Is there a typo in there?
Yeah, I wonder if there's a typo. Is it on page 26?
Yes, it is. It's the third bullet.
I think it should be not in front of the housing.
And not in front of the building.
Because
Correct.
I wrote, I think a word's missing here, yeah.
So it's
And
like,
it's a rather important one. So that is a typo.
Yeah,
so
Apologies.
it's to move away from the development like the CVS mall area where there's parking all in front and the buildings are set back, but to move them to the front, to the sidewalk, and have the parking behind or below.
Correct.
right. Even the Rite Aid Mall and the upper malls have the all of those. They should have been closer to the road with the parking behind it. Is the concept, right? Okay. All right. So I hope that, we have many people on this meeting tonight, and that is really thrilling. So I hope that each and every one of them had an opportunity to look at the revitalization implementation plan that was circulated a number of times in the village blasts and such. But if there are no other questions from the board, I'm going to ask Tiffany and Kevin to stay on. I'm going to go on to our agenda, and if there's a comment section, if anybody in the audience has a comment, maybe we can have some time for comments. But given the number of people on this call, in this Zoom meeting, I don't think we're going to have time for comments from each and every other person. But you're certainly welcome to put your comments in the chat, or questions in the chat, or email anybody with questions or comments about the plan, and we can certainly get back to you in that regard as well.
Nancy, I do have two questions before we move on, and I think someone is actually raising it in the chat as well. I think, we all know there are challenges around parking in that area, and I know you've addressed some of it in here, but I think, just as we start to have more, mixed use, do you feel we will have realistic parking and also congestion, right? Because we have that major intersection there. Could it potentially contribute to traffic congestion in that area if there is significant parking around there? And, entries and exits from those parking lots?
Yeah, I'll answer that. It's an excellent question. And I do think that we have to be very careful about the scale and type and location of an intensity of development that unfolds in the village, so that you do not exacerbate your congestion issues. On the other hand, if you build the type of sort of mixed use pedestrian friendly development, you'll go a long way toward reducing the overall amount of vehicular trips, and you'll have a more pedestrian friendly environment. And also, if you find a location that would be optimal for creating a structured parking facility that would also relieve the congestion that's created from the search for parking. So, we did throw out a few concepts, within the plan of like where you might be able to add structured parking capacity elsewhere in the village and rationalize it. Right now, what we see are people struggling to find parking in limited spaces that are all disconnected from each other, and there not being any sort of rhyme or reason as to where one goes to find parking. So I do think that's an important piece to it. I don't think it precludes the possibility from you having a mixed use, higher intensity downtown. However, I just think it needs to be carefully managed. That's something your planner would help you work on too, is dealing with the parking issues simultaneous with the land use issues.
And my second question was, sorry, I don't know if someone else was trying to ask a question.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Go.
My second question has to do with, you know, we have a flood control project behind, you know, it's on one side of the Sawmill River. And so with the recent storm Ida, we had some businesses that had flooding, and it was an unusual event. But, you know, as we start to increase density, are we thinking about how we're responding to this increase in impervious surfaces and potential risks for local businesses in that area?
Yeah, we are. Now, one of the things that happened during the comprehensive plan was that it was, which was really wonderful, is that it was done concurrently with the local waterfront revitalization plan for the Sawmill Rivershed section that falls within the boundaries of Ardsley. And, you know, with that plan and along with the resiliency measures that were inscribed in it were proposals that once the zoning code is updated, that you go above and beyond the requirements, you know, that for flood management and actually, you know, adopt some rather progressive measures to ensure that businesses and housing does not get flooded. You know, we also had some concerns further south, to be honest with you, where the flood control project actually is not located, right? And so, you know, there were some concerns there. And then also, you know, as we thought about ideal places for development, some of the places that are more upland may be more ideal for that. And that also kind of factored into a bit in our thinking about Center Street as being like a particularly good place for redevelopment. So I think that does have to continue to be addressed both through implementation of the comp plan sections on resiliency and those parts of the LWRP that were inscribed within the comp plan. And then when you take zoning and you update it for the downtown, you would strengthen your resiliency measures and flood management issues in there too.
Great, thanks. Are there any other questions from the board? I see that we have a number of questions in the chat. I'm gonna make sure, Charles, can we make sure that we get a screenshot of all the questions so that we can respond to them after the meeting? Because I don't want to take up the time of Tiffany and Kevin right now to go through each and every of these questions, but we can respond to each and every question following the meeting. With that said, Charles?
Yes, no problem, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, do you want to send us those questions and then we can maybe actually formally write something? So instead of us, you know, giving the opportunity to everyone, then if you want to copy the questions, we're happy to now take a shot at actually writing responses to those.
Sure,
so that
sure.
those questions can keep coming in the chat.
Right, questions tonight and questions that people might have going forward. We'll circle back with you on how best to respond so that maybe we could have a uniform response that we put out from the village with everybody's questions and potential concerns on what they see in the plan. But I will tell you that having worked with you, Tiffany and Kevin, for 3 years now.
Yeah.
You actually stepped in to finalize our comprehensive plan that had gone away at some period of time. That this getting to this stage of the implementation and having this document that's really going to set us on the roads with thoughts and processes and a plan for moving forward, to me is personally exciting. It's been a long time since the village has taken the time to think about what we want to be, you know, in the future. And I think that we have a substantial groundwork and thought process and guideline here to get us to where we want to be. I like the idea of a planner. One of the reasons I like the idea of the planner is boards come and boards change, and we have a plan. And, you know, it is a living document, but it's a document that I think needs to keep the uniformity and the process going forward. So as boards change, we can keep the vision of Ardsley as a vibrant, walkable, livable village for all of us to enjoy. So I thank you very much for your hard work. I really appreciate this document, and I really look forward to you helping us, you know, implement it as we move forward. So thanks. You're welcome to stay on, or you're welcome to leave us at this point.